So what we'll be learning about today is how to do if statements so that you can control a little bit more what your code does. Okay, so to do an example there, what we're going to do is set up a little bit of a spreadsheet, go through how an if statement works in normal Excel, and then convert it into a VBA code. Okay, so we're going to start by having a grade. So let's say, for example, we are doing a test and the pass mark is 40. Okay, and we want to have it displayed in the cell next to it. So in B2, we want to have pass or fail. Okay? So if we want to do that, what we need to do is create an if statement. So if we were just doing this in Excel, we would put equals if, and we'd put our logic test in, which is A2 is greater than, so the greater sign, greater than 40. And then we would have a true value. So if that's true, so in this case, it would be return the value pass, okay? And then if it was false, okay, we would return the value fail. Okay. But if we do that, now what you want to do at this point, as per usual, is you want to test it. Now, what you'll notice too is that, so if it does pass and fail, it's doing what I want it to do. However, when you're doing your testing, you also want to make sure you're testing close to the limits or the edges of your definitions. So if I do it at 40, right on the minimum value, I see that the value is not giving me a return. That if someone's getting a 40, they should be getting a pass, and that's not what it's returning. Whereas if I could put in 39, I get a fail. Okay, so I still get a fail. So there's something not quite right about my logic statement. Okay, so in this case, we want it to be greater than 40 or equal to 40. So the way that you do that in Excel is just add an equal sign there. And if we double check these, so this is important for just thinking about the testing to making sure that you're testing well and accurately to make sure it's absolutely, the function is absolutely doing what you want it to do. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to convert this into a piece of VBA code. Okay, so we're going to create a sub, and this time I might call it pass fail as my sub. Oops, fail. Okay, so the first thing whenever you're setting up an if statement is that you want to make sure that you're trying to get the function to do what you want, is to basically just lay out what the function is. So the structure of an if statement, and these are the kind of things you want to put into your keep stored, so that if you forget how the syntax is, that you can just go and grab it from another part of code that you have lying around. Okay, so if statement, and we're doing our logic test. So what we are doing is we are trying to see whether cell A2 on sheet 4 is greater or less than 40. So we'll put in the reference for the cell, so worksheets, and the name of the sheet, which is sheet 4 in my case. Your sheet might be different. And then dot, and then the range of cells we're interested in, which in this case is cell A2. Okay. Now, we can do exactly the same thing we did in Excel, and we can put greater than 40 for the moment. And then we always put then. So there's always the logic statement, which would be if something, then. Okay. And we'll just lay out the whole statement and we'll explain what each part does. Okay, so there we go. All right, so basically what you've got is you've got the logic part of the statement, and then you've got the end of it. And if you want to document this as part of it, you'd say if true, code is here. And I like to indent it as well. So it's very clear what's happening. And if false, code goes here. So if you want to document that, that's the statement. Okay, so now what we have is we have our logic set up, and we'll do some testing in a second. Okay, so I'm going to put in the true code. So I am wanting to get the VBA to display pass, and of course pass in text. Okay, and I want it to display it next to the cell, so it's B2, not A2. Okay, now again, I'm being lazy, and you should do this as well. Just copy your code down to the false. Okay, and then we can say fail. Okay, because we're going to place it in the same cell. Okay, so we want to do a little bit of testing now. We can push. And we've got to reset this so there's nothing there. Let's see if it works for me. So yep, fail when it's failed, so it's below 39. If it is 67, for example, and we'll take that out for a moment, and we push play and test it again, we can see it's passed. So it's basically doing what we're expecting to do. Now, if I try doing 40, that was the problem last time. I'm expecting that we'll get the wrong answer. Okay, so we get fail at 40. So we've just got to correct our logic statement to fix that. And I'm hoping, because I haven't done this for a while, that it's the same equal and greater and is the same syntax. Whoops. Okay, and I'll just delete that and we'll test it. Okay, so we should try and get a pass there. Yep, we got a pass there. And if we do it at 39, we should get a fail. And we'll just test that. Okay. Okay, so it's now doing what we wanted to do. Okay. So if we want to then take this if statement and we want to take it a step further, we might want to, for example, we're not obviously going to have one grade. We're going to have many. So if we put in many, several grades, and we'll put in 10 grades, any value will do. Okay, so what we want to do is if we wanted to get this to evaluate all of them, we would have to apply our loop information to it. Okay, so we would have to go in and put this if statement into a loop. Okay, so we can use the information we learned from last lesson and put in a for statement. So for, and for the for statement, we're going to say we need some sort of variable to bounce through, don't we? So let's call it, better give it let's put a variable in first. So we'll call it row. And we'll put in for row. Now, you might remember last time we put in 2 to 10, and then we got it to step through one at a time. Okay. Now, whoops, made an error there. Okay, so we have the first bit of code. Now, as I said, keep trying to keep your code neat. Okay, and we want all of these, but at the first row, we want to be, we want all of this if statement stuff to happen inside the loop so that each time we do the evaluation, it steps down a row, steps down a row, steps down a row. Okay, so basically looks at the logic statement and says pass or fail, moves down a cell, looks pass or fail. Okay, so we want to put in our next statement, and that's going to complete the loop. So you might remember we had a loop, and for that we're going to have next row. Okay. Now again, with your laying out of your code, because you can already see the code's just getting a little bit more complex already, And you'll find that eventually you get to the stage where it's a loop on a loop on a loop and things like that. So make sure you're doing your syntax. So each time we want each time there's a layer of or a hierarchy of code, should be indenting it inward because it makes the code a lot easier to read. Okay, and then we've got our end if. So we've kind of got looping, then some if stuff that goes to the next level down, back to the if level and up. So you can sort of see the logic of how the function is actually working. Okay, so once we have that, let's start to actually fix up the and do some adjustments. Okay. Now I'm going to do some of the adjustments here, but I'm going to ask you guys to do the rest of it as part of the task for today. So the first thing is when the row is starting, we're interested in using this row variable to change the row number. Okay, now the first row that we're interested in evaluating is row 2. Okay, so we can say, well, row 2. And the last row that we want to evaluate is row 11. Okay, so that. Okay, now with each one of these, and I'm just going to do the first one and I'll get you guys to do the rest of it, is that we want to use that row, the value of that row, to insert into each one of the cell references so that as the code goes through, it's referencing the correct cell. So in the case of A2, well, A2 at different stages could be 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Okay, so we want to adjust that. And we can do that by putting in row. And then you can do the same thing for each one of these, and you should be able to get pass fail all the way down. Okay. Now I'm not going to go any further with that today. What I'm going to do is show you another function in Excel, and then I'm going to get you guys to put those together to create a function that evaluates the data. Okay, and this function we're going to teach you is a random number generator. And the reason that the random number generator is useful is for when you create a game or something and you want to have random rolls of dice or something like that. Having a command that will generate a random number is really handy. Okay, so let's just have a little bit of a play with random numbers. Okay, so and also with this, make sure before we move on to the other things, make sure that you are documenting the code, having a good play, making sure everything is working, okay, before you move on to the random generator command. Okay, so let's call it random. Okay, so the command for random is, sorry, I'm just looking it up as I go. So you might remember too that one of the things you might realize too is that, as I've said to you earlier on, is that you don't necessarily need to remember all the code per se. You can actually look at these things up once you get to a certain level of skill, and there's something you don't know how to do, you haven't come across before. You can basically just go into the internet and do a search. A great place to go is things like Mr. Excel, and just search. There's a whole forum on getting new pieces of code. So once you get your code to a level where you're really confident and your problem solving is starting to evolve, then you can take other people's code, copy it in, and modify it as you require. Okay, so for random, and you'll excuse me, I've got a second computer screen here just looking. Is the function for random. So we'll just put the message box in for the moment. Just random. Okay. Hope that works. R in there, so message box. Syntax not right. And let's push play. Okay, so it's generating a number. So let's see if it generates a different number. So what you can see is it's generating numbers that are not ideal for the purposes of what we're interested in. So we want numbers that are between 0 and 100, okay? And we generally probably just want whole numbers, okay? So we can modify this statement a little bit, and the way we can do it is int, which means integer, okay? And then we can put the number in, okay? So this will hopefully round up to the nearest number. Now, what you'll notice was happening with random is that it's generating values, but if you've already haven't worked it out yet, it's generating values between 0 and 1 in decimal. So if we wanted to generate values between 0 and 100, we would need to take that number and multiply it by 100. Okay. And then hopefully we'll start to get numbers that 77, yep. 1. Okay. So it's generating all my random numbers in different times. Okay, so that's how you can generate a random number. Now, just for the purposes of learning, if we wanted to generate we wanted to do a roll of the dice. So let's say we're trying to simulate a random roll of the dice for a game. So we might be making Monopoly in Excel or something, and we need to generate a dice roll of between 1 and 6. Okay, so pause the video now and have a play with how to generate that random number, and then I will come back in a second and show you how to do it. Alrighty, so if we want to do a random number and we want it to be between 1 and 6, if 1 and 6, what we need to do is we need to adjust the number to 6 instead of 100, okay? And that's going to give us numbers like this, 4. Let's keep testing. But it's giving us numbers of 0. So there's a bit of a problem. So when the value that's generated randomly is less than or close to 0, then it will round down and give you a number of 0, which is not what we want. Okay, so if we've put in let's say a +1, so if we have 1 plus, I'll put it in brackets, our random number generator. Okay, and let's see what we get. 3. You have to test them a few times. So we've got 6, 5, 3. Just keep testing them. Okay, so just keep testing and just see on the off chance whether we're going to get above 6. Okay, we got 1. 3. Okay, so I think that works. Okay, and okay, so if I want to keep this as a useful little command, then I would put it into my code of library so that I don't, when I come around and I have to do something like this, I don't have to solve that problem again. And this is one of the big advantages of VBA code, is once you have solved a particular problem in some way, shape or form, if the same problem rolls up again, it becomes easier. So code gets easier and easier and easier as you learn more and you have to solve more and more problems. So this is a random number generator. Okay. And 6. Okay. Okay, so now we've got ourselves a random number generator. Now, the reason I got you to do that is the task for today, now that you've learned what the if statement does and that sort of thing, is to produce a list of, we'll go to the task now, a list of 100 students' grades, so they can be created using the random number generator between 1 and 100. that evaluates whether they have passed or failed. Okay, and that's what you're expected to do. So it should be a loop, and to activate that macro, you need to put in a button so that it clears the a button so it activates the macro. Okay, so I hope you good luck with it, and make sure you ask lots of questions. Make sure that you're trying lots of things and testing your code properly. Okay, guys, good luck, and we'll see you in class.